In the waters between Iran and Oman, there is a narrow passage most people have never seen. But every day, the modern world depends on it. Nearly a fifth of the planet's oil supply flows through a single stretch of water known as the Strait of Hormuz. Massive tankers carrying millions of barrels of crude oil move through this corridor every day, traveling between the energy fields of the Persian Gulf and the economies that power the modern world. And now, that narrow corridor has become the center of a rapidly escalating geopolitical crisis. Iranian officials have warned that ships attempting to pass through the strait could face attacks as tensions in the region intensify. Shipping companies are watching carefully. Insurance costs for vessels traveling through the Gulf are rising, and tankers are beginning to hesitate before entering one of the world's most important maritime gateways. Because if this passage becomes too dangerous to cross, the consequences will not stay in the Middle East. Oil prices would surge, energy markets would react instantly, and economies thousands of kilometers away, from Japan to India to Europe, could feel the shock almost immediately. But to understand why this threat matters, you have to look beyond the headlines. Because the real story is not simply about war. It is about geography, a narrow maritime choke point that quietly became one of the most important pieces of infrastructure in the global economy, and how control over this passage has shaped decades of strategy, tension, and military planning. To understand the power of the Strait of Hormuz, you first have to understand how narrow it actually is. At its tightest point, the strait is only about 33 kilometers wide, but the lanes used by the world's largest oil tankers are even smaller. Ships entering and leaving the Gulf travel through two designated shipping corridors, each only a few kilometers wide, separated by a narrow buffer zone. Through this maritime funnel, enormous vessels move day and night. Most of them are carrying crude oil or liquefied natural gas from the energy-rich states of the Persian Gulf. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates export vast quantities of energy to the rest of the world. And for most of that energy, there is only one practical route out. Ships must pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Once they exit the Gulf, these tankers head towards some of the largest energy consumers on Earth. Refineries in China, India, Japan, and South Korea depend heavily on this flow of oil. For these economies, the strait is not just another shipping route. It is a vital artery in the global energy system. But geography has created a powerful vulnerability, because along the northern coastline of the strait lies Iran, and that position gives the country something extremely valuable: proximity. From its coastal bases and nearby islands, Iran can monitor nearly every ship that passes through the corridor. Radar systems track vessel movement. Naval patrols operate across the region. Missile batteries and military installations sit within range of the shipping lanes. In times of tension, Iran has the ability to deploy fast attack boats, naval mines, drones, and coastal missile systems throughout the surrounding waters. Even a limited disruption could cause serious uncertainty for global shipping companies. And uncertainty alone can slow the movement of oil, because oil tankers are among the most valuable commercial ships operating anywhere in the world. A single supertanker may carry cargo worth hundreds of millions of dollars. If ship operators believe a route has become too dangerous, they may delay voyages or avoid the area entirely. But finding alternative routes is not easy. Pipelines exist that bypass portions of the Gulf. The Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, for example, allows some oil from the United Arab Emirates to reach the Gulf of Oman without crossing the strait. But these pipelines can only carry a fraction of the energy that normally moves through the Strait of Hormuz each day. Most exports still depend on the maritime corridor, which means the entire system relies on this narrow gateway remaining open. For decades, the Strait of Hormuz has been more than just a shipping route. It has been a strategic pressure point, because controlling this passage does not necessarily require shutting it down completely. Sometimes, the mere possibility of disruption is enough. Oil markets respond not only to supply, but to perceived risk. When tensions rise near the Gulf, traders begin adjusting prices immediately. Insurance companies reassess the safety of sending ships through the region. Shipping firms calculate whether the danger of transit has become too high. Even a single military incident can send shockwaves through the system. Naval escorts may be required. Tankers may delay entry. and traffic through the strait can slow dramatically. This has happened before. During periods of confrontation between Iran and Western powers, the Gulf has witnessed tanker seizures, naval standoffs, and threats to mining operations. Each time tensions rise, the same question emerges. Could the strait be blocked? In theory, a complete shutdown would be extremely difficult. The waterway is wide enough that maintaining a permanent blockade would require sustained military control. But a full closure is not the only scenario that matters. A series of smaller disruptions could have a similar effect. Naval mines could force ships to wait for clearance. Missile threats from coastal positions could make transit unpredictable. Fast attack boats operating from nearby islands could harass commercial vessels. None of these actions would necessarily seal the strait entirely, but they could make the passage unstable enough that shipping companies hesitate to enter. And hesitation alone can disrupt the flow of energy. Because global oil markets operate on tight expectations of supply, when the possibility of disruption appears, prices can surge as buyers scramble to secure alternative sources. Countries heavily dependent on Gulf energy imports, especially China, India, and Japan, watch the situation extremely closely. For them, the Strait of Hormuz is one of the main arteries feeding their energy systems. But the strategic importance of the strait extends beyond oil. The waters around the passage have become one of the most heavily militarized maritime zones on Earth. Naval forces from several countries operate throughout the region. Among them are ships from the United States Navy, which maintains a long-standing presence to protect commercial shipping. Their patrols are designed to keep the shipping lanes open and deter interference with tanker traffic. But deterrence itself creates a delicate balance, because every military presence increases the possibility of confrontation. A misunderstanding, a small naval encounter, a miscalculation between armed forces operating in close proximity. In a waterway this narrow, even a limited incident could quickly disrupt global shipping. The story of the Strait of Hormuz is ultimately a story about geography. Long before modern energy markets existed, this narrow passage already held strategic importance. It sits at the only maritime exit of the Persian Gulf, a region that today contains some of the largest oil reserves on Earth. As the global economy expanded through the 20th century, the strait quietly transformed into one of the most important gateways in the modern world. For exporters like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, the strait is an economic lifeline. For importers like China, India, Japan, and South Korea, it is a vital supply route. And for Iran, the country that borders its northern coastline, the passage represents powerful strategic leverage. That leverage has shaped diplomacy, military planning, and global energy policy for decades. Because the modern world runs on interconnected systems. Energy flows across oceans. Supply chains stretch across continents. Factories, transportation networks, and entire economies depend on reliable access to fuel. And when one narrow waterway becomes responsible for transporting such a large share of that energy, the entire system inherits a vulnerability. The Strait of Hormuz is one of several choke points where geography concentrates global power. Across the world, there are other passages that quietly influence trade and energy flows. But few carry stakes as high as this one. Every tanker entering the strait represents not just cargo, but the fragile balance of a global system. A system that depends on narrow routes remaining open. For now, ships continue to pass through these waters. Tankers line up at the entrance to the Gulf. Naval patrols watch over the shipping lanes, and global markets monitor the situation closely. Because the world's energy supply still moves through a handful of geographic bottlenecks. And when tensions rise around one of them, the consequences can ripple across the entire global economy. The Strait of Hormuz may appear small on a map, but its influence stretches around the world. And as long as the global economy depends on oil moving through this narrow corridor, one question will remain. How stable is the system that keeps it open?